If you are about to go through a remote onboarding process for a new job, you may want to keep watching. Or if you have recently started a role that is fully remote and you're finding it a bit challenging, then I'm going to share with you 5 simple tips today how to get the most out of being onboarded remotely for a role, not meeting your colleagues in person, and how you can make the most of that. So stick around. Hello everyone and welcome to The Bridge Coaching. My name is Emmy Peterson and I have been working as a career transition coach for quite a few years, since 2013, helping people transition in their career and life in general. And with the year that 2020 was, and 2021 is shaping up to be very much the same, loads of people are working remotely, whether by choice or by necessity because of restrictions and other things. And it's becoming more and more popular anyway for companies to have branches in different parts of a country. I'm currently based in Australia, which is quite a large country, and I know quite a few of you viewers are actually from the US as well. So you'd have the same thing where you work very frequently with people in other parts of the business. But mostly today's video is going to help you if you are going through a remote onboarding process for a role, or if you have recently started a role that's remote and you're finding it a bit challenging. So let's get into the 5 things that you can do to really help yourself and give yourself the best opportunity to put your best foot forward in this initial time. So what I'm about to share with you is actually based on my own experience. So early 2020, as we know, things changed quite drastically in the professional landscape here in Australia where I live. People started working from home from around March time, and incidentally that is when I started my new job. And the interesting thing about that was that I went through a fully remote onboarding process where I didn't meet most of my colleagues for a very, very long time. So what then are some things that I did and that you can do that really, really helped me land in the role? And I know clients of mine that have also used similar methods to this to land in their roles. So let's get into it. So the very first thing to do is to get 100% clear on the role, the ways of working, and how you're going to be checking in, mostly with your direct manager, but also with other teams that you work with. And even if the role was made very clear to you in the recruitment process, it is really good to kind of sit down in your first couple of days and get really clear with your manager what the expectations are. Will you have daily check-ins, weekly check-ins? Which projects are your first priorities? And even if it sounds obvious, getting you crystal clear on what you're meant to be doing and what you will be measured on is really important so that the remote workspace can continue. Part of this first step is also the ways of working, which has to do with kind of the technology that you use. So are you using Slack, Teams, email? Is your manager okay with text messages or phone calls? So just get really clear on the preferences and the medium to use for your check-ins and what you will be measured against. The thing is, if you do this really clearly at the start, you can then refer back to it down the track and go, okay, so what we agreed back then was X. I haven't heard anything differently, so I was assuming that was still the case, if there are any confusion or misunderstandings down the track. The second one can be a bit tricky for the introverts out there, but it is to introduce yourself to as many people as possible in the business. Now, I don't want you to randomly call people that you have never spoken to or don't have any interactions with. But what I did, and what I'm really glad that I did, is that I reached out to almost all the people. There was a fairly small organization, and I reached out to almost all of them individually with an email or a message. Not all of them at once, because I had work to do as well. But to get to know people socially is really important. And I was lucky that this company had a few kind of group social events and quizzes and things like that that we did remotely. That was really fun and a good way to get to know people. But I find, because of the digital medium of video calls or phone calls, it is much easier to chat to people one-on-one. So what I did over my first month is that I reached out to almost all the staff members individually and had a quick chat with them, got to understand, over 15 or 20 minutes, understanding a bit about their background and their role and how my role or my team could work with them. And I kind of see it as a bit of the virtual coffee. And it worked really, really well for me. So depending on the culture in the business that you are going into, make sure that you get to know people. And this has two key things. It helps your belonging. It helps you land in the role and feel like you belong in the company because people feel like they know you. And secondly, when you need to work with these people down the track on a particular project or task, they will know you and you will know them, which is fantastic. So you don't have to see it as an obstacle that you can't meet them in person. And a lot of companies do a great job of hosting social activities as well. So make sure that you go to those quizzes or online things, even if you find it a little bit challenging. So the third one is more probably around understanding the business as a whole. So hopefully during the recruitment process and onboarding, your manager or managers, if you have more than one of them, would have talked you through the company, how the business works. And a key thing here that I always say to people, regardless of the role you work in, is to understand your competitors. And this is something people often forget because they'll dive straight into working on the tasks that they're there to do. And it's probably more important for sales and marketing roles to really understand your competitors. But even if you're in project delivery or something like that, or a very technical role, understanding the competitor market, or at least the top 5 competitors to your organization, will help you in your day-to-day work as well, because it will help you be aware of what else is going on out in the market. So get to know the business really well, the values, the mission, all that kind of stuff in my interview course that I have done. So prepare for job interviews. I'll link it up here. I've got a video as well as a course that can really help you prepare as you go into a new business. And there's an exercise there around specifically around getting to know the company that you might find really useful as you're doing this third step that I'm recommending today. Next one, number 4, it goes sort of hand in hand with socializing and getting to know the people, is to get to know the departments. Now, if you're in a really big global business, this can be a little bit challenging, but it can be as easy as asking your manager for an org chart and even doing a little bit of research yourself on the company intranet or something like that to understand what the departments are, how they interlink, and how they connect to each other. And pretty quickly, especially if you have a role that spans over several departments, you'll start to see patterns of which ones might work really well together, where there might be more challenges or misunderstanding and things like that. And it doesn't matter if your role is junior or senior. Obviously, the more senior you are, the more understanding you need to have of the business as a whole. But even if your role is fairly junior and very niche in a particular area of the business, understanding the different departments, even if you don't work with them day to day, will help you understand the business and your role in this business. And the final one is don't be afraid to ask for help. When you go through a remote onboarding, and especially after the year that 2020 was, which forced a lot of businesses to do this sort of onboarding remotely, and they might not have been fully prepared for it. A lot of these organizations know that there is room for improvement. So make sure that you chat to the person in HR or people in culture that helped onboard you and give them some feedback, both the stuff that you really liked, if there were some things that really helped you, or a few things that you think that could be improved. Because it is really good to give feedback as you have gone through or are in the process of going through the onboarding process. It's really important for them to understand what worked and what didn't work so they can start to streamline more effective, happy, connected remote onboarding. Now, I know that it can be really exhausting, especially when you start a new role if it is fully remote, to spend a lot of time on your screen. So in a future video, I'm actually putting together my top 7 tips on how you can stay healthy and engaged when you're working from home or you're working remotely away from the office. So keep a lookout and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see that video. It's coming out very soon. And until then, look after yourself, make sure that you ask for help through the onboarding process, And if certain things are feeling a bit weird and clunky and you've never gone through a remote onboarding process before, that's fine. Because as I talked about in a previous video about self-confidence and self-esteem, our confidence and our ability to do something increases when we do something more. So I had never gone through a remote onboarding experience before, and I must say I feel a lot more confident about it now that I have done it once in my life. But I think what we are going to see in the workforce in the future is more and more roles that will have a fully remote or partially remote element. And it's really important to know how to deal with that first little while. So all the best, and if you have any questions or comments or anything like that, I will leave my email address in the description box below, and feel free to reach out with any questions either there or in the comment section. So all the best, take care of yourself, good luck with your onboarding, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.